Namaskar and thank you for joining us on the Economic Brief, the show that looks at key stories from the worlds of business and economy with an Indian lens on the world. I'm Mark Lynn. On the show, a surge in India's total exports and reduced imports lead to a 30% fall year-on-year in trade deficit for the month of May. The Israel-Iran conflict will impact energy supply chain, since 20% of global oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Still with Iran, we look at what's provoked this conflict and what it does to Iran's civil nuclear program. And investors flee Bangladesh. Foreign investment plummets by over 70% in the first half of the current fiscal year. Before we look at India's trade deficit reducing, let's listen to India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal. He's explaining the reasons for India's ability to work out trade agreements with other nations. Here he's speaking about the UK-India He's speaking at the UK-India Global Forum in London on the good marriage between these countries regarding the FTA to double bilateral trade in 5 years.
Every country in the world has some competitive advantages over the other. There would be areas in which UK would be very strong and can add huge value to the India growth story. And there will be many sectors where India can add value to the UK growth story. We have to bring these complementarities to work together, to engage with each other. We've assessed the entire trade and business climate in both countries. There's hardly anything on which we really compete. We actually complement each other.
So let's now turn our attention to the product of India's FTAs to a large extent. A 30% drop in India's trade deficit in a year. The trade deficit, which is actually the difference between imports and exports, has narrowed to $6.6 billion in May of 2025. This is because India's total exports grew to $71.12 billion. Which is a 2.77% year-on-year increase. And this reduces pressure on the current account deficit, which is actually the difference between imports and other external payments and exports and other external earnings. So this lowers, in fact, CAD, and the CAD or the CAD, it helps preserve foreign exchange reserves. So let's look at merchandise exports. Overall, it is down to $38.73 billion. That's down by 2.17% from May of 2024. The decline is largely due to falling petroleum product prices. Now, India is a refiner of petroleum and hence exports a lot of petroleum refined. But non-petroleum exports also has risen by about 5%. Electronic goods, 54.1% is the increase in electronic goods. Organic and inorganic chemicals are up 16%. Pharmaceuticals are up 7.4%. Marine products up 26.8%. Textile garments up 11.3%. And service exports are also up they're up in fact the service exports up to $32.39 billion. That's up from $29.61 billion in May of 2024. So we can see that there's a strong performance and it has helped offset the dip in goods exports, that's in the services sector. So the export performance has improved, as we can see. But let's turn our attention to imports and the trade deficit. Now, imports are down slightly, not enough, but down slightly to $77.75 billion. The trade deficit is at $6.62 billion. From $9.35 billion in May of 2024. Global oil price fluctuation remains a key factor going forward. Well, during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Croatia, the Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković, He referred to the potential of the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, the IMAC, which in fact has India, the United States, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, France, Germany, Italy, and the European Union as members. Now, the IMEC is this economic corridor is expected to generate significant economic benefits and also improve geopolitical ties among the participating countries. Let's listen to him.
We believe that Prime Minister Modi's initiative on the economic corridor between India, Middle East, and Europe is an excellent opportunity. So India, European Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and then European ports. This is an opportunity to connect Croatia as a Mediterranean gate to Central Europe and to connect it to India, India's economy, and India's market. This year, Croatia presides over the Three Seas initiative connecting Baltic Sea, Black Sea, and the Adriatic Sea. So this corridor will get even greater Central European dimension.
Well, Dr. Nilanjan Banik, economist, joins us with his analysis. Thank you, Dr. Banik, for being with us now. Do you, in fact, do you see the reasons for the narrowing of trade deficit indicating that India has the resources to manage headwinds?
Mark, what is happening over the last 10 years is a telltale sign that we are moving from low technology export to high technology exports. Let me explain. Earlier, what India was known for, it was exporting leather footwear items, it was exporting agricultural product, it was exporting, let's say, handloom items. Now what is happening, what you just now mentioned a few minutes back, we are actually exporting what we say income-sensitive products, such as refined petroleum product, electronics items, specialty steels, which find users in automobiles, aerospace. We are also exporting quite a number of automobiles. What this is telling you, it is telling you that the technology-based export from India, it has increased. And as you know that the more we export this kind of products, which are technology intensive or capital intensive product, the revenue or the return from our export is going to increase. And precisely this is what we are seeing in the domain of merchandise tradable items. Apart from this, you have already mentioned about services. India is today world leader when it comes to IT or ITES related services.
Right.
So if you are talking about cloud computing, if you are talking about, let's say, software issues related services, India is a place to be. In fact, you will happy to know that India now houses the maximum number of global capability centers, which are the research capability centers of various multinationals. We house close to around 1,900 global capability centers in India, where basically these multinationals, they are outsourcing their HR, they are outsourcing their professional development, they are outsourcing their BFSI, banking financial services type research to India. And all these are leading to a higher value addition in the exports, which means the value of our exports are going up. And that precisely explains how come you are seeing the current account deficit is falling over a period of time.
Yes.
And we should kind of thank the Indian government for the policy like Made in India or production linked incentive scheme, which is kind of fueling this kind of high value added export product from India.
Yes, Dr. Banik, also, you know, how keen are other countries to do business with India? We're talking about FTAs. There seems to be a strong desire for other countries to work out FTAs with India. I mean, the EU, for one, and we heard the Croatian Prime Minister there also talking about FTAs. They're keen that the EU works out an FTA as soon as possible with India.
Yeah, because as I said, that we are now increasingly kind of becoming a specialist in producing manufacturing goods which are high technology embodied. For instance, you mentioned about Cyprus. Why Cyprus is more important? India is gradually become one of the largest sellers of products like missiles, you know. So when Cyprus have had a problem with places like Turkey, or for that matter, we have seen Philippines, or for that matter, we have seen Armenia. They are actually started buying lots of defense-related items from India. Now, India is also a big market, so when you're talking about FTA, it's not only they are also going to import items from us, but for them, for their manufacturer, India offered a big market. So it's a win-win situation when it comes to signing FTA with countries like India, because you have access to big market. At the same time, you have a place where you have a cutting edge technology when it comes to services. So therefore, it makes even more sense to do trade with India, because we are offering something both which are capable in high technology based manufacturing items, but as well as cutting edge services sectors that just now I mentioned about.
Right. Dr. Banik, stay with us as we move to our next story. Now, the Israel-Iran conflict, it has cast a long shadow over global energy markets. And countries like India are reliant on oil imports. We did mention, of course, that India, refines a lot of oil and also exports. But the Strait of Hormuz, which is a narrow but vital choke point between Iran and Oman, it is at the heart of this conflict and concern, because roughly 20% of global oil and a quarter of LNG trade in the world, it passes through the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has threatened to close the strait, which would be a seismic disruption to global energy flows. Let's look at this report. The Israel-Iran conflict has directly impacted both regional and global economies. Key infrastructure was hit in Iran, including parts of the South Pars gas field, one of the largest natural gas reserves in the world. This will not only disrupt domestic energy production, but threatens Iran's export revenues, which are already under strain from long-standing sanctions. The attacks also killed several top military and nuclear scientists, further destabilizing Iran's strategic sectors.
Iran has made such technological breakthroughs, and they likely have the internal infrastructure for training scientists in their own universities and so on, that I'm sure there's going to be a next generation of scientists who are going to be able to pick up that work.
Regionally, the conflict has heightened fears of a broader war in West Asia, a region critical to global energy supply. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow but vital waterway through which about one-third of the world's seaborne oil passes, has become a flashpoint. Iran has hinted at possibly closing the strait, which would be a dramatic escalation with severe consequences for global oil supply.
It is indeed the most dangerous time for the Middle East, because in case of the participation of the United States directly, because it is participating indirectly, then Iran will close the Strait of Hormuz. Therefore, the world economy will be disturbed and will suffer delay. Everything will stop.
Roughly 20% of global oil and 25% of LNG trade pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices have already surged, Brent crude having jumped to around $75 per barrel, up from around $65 to $70 range before the conflict escalated. Even without a full blockade, the mere threat has raised shipping and insurance costs, adding a geopolitical risk premium to every barrel of oil. India, the world's third largest oil consumer, imports over 85% of its crude oil. While India hasn't bought oil directly from Iran since 2019, it still imports largely from Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. They all use the Strait of Hormuz. While India currently has diversified sources for oil supplies and strategic reserves that will counter immediate supply shocks, the country, like the rest of the world, will be monitoring the situation closely to see when energy supply disruptions will become more pronounced. The Economic Brief, DD India. Let's turn to Professor Banik once again. He continues to be with us. Professor Banik, is this conflict, currently only a regional matter, or does it already have global ramifications for the global economy?
Mark, the good news is, as of now, already oil has just increased by $10 per barrel, which kind of translates to if you do a rough of the back of the envelope calculation, roughly to 6 rupees per liter at the petrol pump. Luckily for us, this increase has not yet been passed through to the Indian consumer because government has, as of now, maintained a policy that there is no increase in price of petroleum. What we have seen after the first 2 days, the oil price has kind of become stabilized. Now, you mentioned a very important point. What if the Strait of Hormuz get affected? Because as you know that Iran already, it's a part of the OPEC system and it's only producing 2% of the world oil supply. But thankfully, because of sanction by the US, that particular amount of oil is not coming to India or elsewhere. These are actually sold by what we say shadow fleet only to the Chinese counterpart. As of now, US has not entered the war directly, and what Iran has said, so long US does not enter the war, it's not going to place naval mines in the Strait of Hormuz, which means almost 20% of the world shipping, oil shipping companies, which actually transport their oil through Strait of Hormuz, it is going to happen in that fashion. Okay. And my earnest hope is maybe there is going to be a ceasefire, and that will not let us enter in a scenario where the Strait of Hormuz is closed, because if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, then in the extreme scenario, we are talking about the increase in oil price by almost $23 to $25 per barrel, which means this 6 rupees per liter increment that I'm talking about right now will get increased almost threefold, which is around 20 rupees per, and that will have a bad impact on our current account deficit because 80% of our crude is something that we import from outside. So I hope that a missile does not fly over Strait of Hormuz, because if that happens, that is the bad news for our CAD.
Dr. Banik, also, if we look long term, you know, the India has this initiative which is called the IMEC, the Middle East corridor. Now, what will it take, you know, to get past all these geopolitical hurdles to bring it to success? It's a project in the works, and it's going to transform basically trade between much of the world, and they will have access, you know, to Indian markets, and also India will have access to their markets.
Yeah, so this project is our way of, or this is exactly what China is doing in terms of One Belt, One Road initiative. That's our One Belt, One Road initiative. And this will give us access not only to the UAE market, but across Saudi Arabia and Israel, straight away to the European market. So this is something the Indian government or the policymakers is really looking forward to. Now, the thing is whether it is possible to contain this conflict, which is, of course, outside the control of Indian policymakers, and try to see that whether somehow US and Israel can reign over this current leadership of Iran. If that happens, already we are seeing that Mr. Trump is making all the visit to the Middle East or UAE region, as well as Saudi Arabia, and trying to cement this economic front that we are seeing at this point of time, which is a good news for India. Because India is also, by the way, is very close in terms of trading ties and economic ties with UAE as well as Saudi Arabia. And Israel is known to India as all-weather friend. So once this war subsides, I think there is a great chance of India to take advantage of this project, which runs from or through UAE, cut across Saudi Arabia, and then across Israel, and give us access to the European market.
Indeed, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Professor Nilanjan Banik. Thank you for joining us and putting all this into perspective. Moving on to our next story, in fact, which is continuing with the Iran-Israel conflict. Now, Iran's civil nuclear program is no longer just a technical issue, it's a geopolitical flashpoint, as we can see. But how did it reach this stage? And what does it do for Iran's investments in nuclear energy with this conflict? Anu Kaushik reports.
We launched this operation to eliminate two existing threats to the state of Israel: the nuclear threat and the threat of ballistic missiles.
I had a great deal for them. They should have made that deal. 60 days we talked about it, and in the end they decided not to do it, and now they wish they did it.
Iran's nuclear program is at the heart of its conflict with Israel and tensions with the US. Both US and Israel have accused Iran of trying to build nuclear weapons. Tehran maintains that its nuclear program is for civilian purposes only. In 2015, a landmark agreement called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the Iran nuclear deal, was signed between Iran and the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, namely China, France, Russia, UK, and the US. The signatories also included Germany and the European Union. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program in return for lifting of international sanctions. It also agreed to monitoring of its nuclear facilities by the International Atomic Energy Agency. In 2018, President Donald Trump pulled the US out of the deal, citing non-compliance by Tehran. The deal was inked under the Barack Obama presidency. Uranium enrichment is key to developing nuclear technology. Iran is currently enriching uranium up to 60%. This could easily be refined further to 90%, that is, weapons grade material. Iran's main nuclear facilities include Natanz and Fordo. Natanz electricity infrastructure was destroyed by Israeli strikes. The point of interest is Fordo, which produces vast majority of Iran's enriched uranium. It is dug deep into a mountain, making it difficult for missiles to target the plant. Just before the recent Iran-Israel conflict began, Tehran and Washington were scheduled to hold the latest round of nuclear talks in Oman. Now the talks remain cancelled indefinitely. Anu Kaushik's report for the Economic Brief, DD India.
Well, Bangladesh's economy is showing signs of serious strain, with factories shutting down, foreign investment plummeting, and unemployment rising sharply. Experts warn that the country could be facing a long-term crisis. Our correspondent brings us an in-depth report on what's driving this economic downturn and what lies ahead. We leave you with Diptanshu Kashyap's report. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.
Factories shut, machines silenced. In Bangladesh's industrial zones, including Ghazipur and Narayanganj, more than 60,000 workers are staring at an uncertain future, as nearly 100 factories have closed down permanently. Once bustling production floors now stand abandoned, a stark symbol of a wider crisis. With GDP growth projected to fall to just 3.3%, Bangladesh faces its sharpest slowdown in 2 decades, raising alarm among economists and industry leaders.
So normally, for the interim government situation, the investor don't want to invest; they would like to keep themselves a position, wait and see. So I hope in near future there will be election, and that election has to be credible and fair election, so the people can give their verdict. So accordingly, there will be a government, we hope, then investment situation will improve.
Foreign direct investment has virtually collapsed, down by 70% in the first half of this fiscal. Cash-starved businesses are barely surviving. Fuel shortages and soaring interest rates have further crippled the operations. Many investors linked to former ruling party Awami League have either fled, gone into hiding, or landed behind bars, leading their enterprises to collapse. As public frustration grows, experts warn that the economic fallout could destabilize the country's already fragile industrial backbone. The World Bank now predicts 3 million more people could slip into poverty in Bangladesh by 2025 if urgent reforms are not initiated. With political uncertainty rising ahead of the national polls, confidence in the economy is at a breaking point. Banks are too weak to lend, and businesses are reluctant to invest. For 2.1 million Bangladeshis who have already lost their jobs, and most of them women, the road ahead looks increasingly less promising. With inputs from Naval Singh Parmar, Diptanshu Kashyap's report for the Economic Brief DD India.